This webinar is going to take a look at the different job types in ADAPT. So let's take a look. So permanent roles, as we know, are going to be roles that are going to be where the candidate's going to be permanently employed by the client. And we'll go and take a look at that shortly. Now, how we look at fixed term salaried roles in ADAPT is also by creating a permanent role. And what you can do in there, which we'll see in a sec, is that you can put on there, tick that it's a fixed term role, it's salaried, so you'd put in those salary ranges, and you can also put an end date. So that's how you would manage a fixed term salary role in the system. Now, where it gets a bit more confusing sometimes, and we get most questions, is around what is the difference between a contract role, a temp regular job, and a temp shift job. So how we see a contract job is basically a continuous contract, usually of someone at a professional level, who quite often is a limited company or part of an umbrella company. Okay, so that is a contract that could go on to, technically, you can do a one-day contract in the system, but very typically it's for 3 months, 6 months, a year, etc. And it's very static, it's the same hours, ongoing, and then at the end of each week, you can then enter in a timesheet or ad hoc timesheets if they do overtime as well. So that is your contract roles in the system. And you can do those on an hourly rate, a daily rate, or a weekly rate. Now, when it comes to temp roles or temp in the system, there are two different types of job. And as we can see there, we've got temp regular and we've also got temp shift. So regular, think of it that the agency, yourselves, will be the employer of that candidate. When we say regular, we mean that the hours per week and per day, the people in the shifts, and the rates of pay are all going to be the same each week. So, for example, if you were looking at a receptionist or admin, it could be they're doing 8:30 or 9 till 4:30 or 5, but you're going to put in the same hours. So you'd put in 8:30 to 5, and you put that in Monday to Friday, and that's generally static through the duration of that employment. Obviously, if they do work overtime or sickness, you can manage that in the timesheets at the end, or you can amend that on the shifts. Now, when it comes to temp shift, it is the opposite. It's based very much on shift patterns or ad hoc shifts. So it could be you're working on maybe a project for construction, and you might need 6 labourers one day on site in the morning. You might need 5 the next day. You might need 4 the day after. You might need 3 people that come and work afternoon to evening. So it's very much, the reason it is shift is it's going to be different shift patterns, possibly on different rates and different numbers of people. And it can change weekly, or you can build patterns that are ongoing, but it's very much about it being very, very flexible in the system. So let's go and take a look at that now we've seen or heard the explanation. Okay, so I'm not going to actually go through the full job process, but what I will do is begin to create each job so you can see the differences in there. So if we go over to one of my companies I'm working with, so let's go to Amazon. Excellent, okay. And they are a parent company that I'm working with, as we can see on the right. But one of the clients actually with them that I'm doing, got roles for, is Digital Visitor. So let's click on that, and that will take us to the client record. So how you can add new jobs in the system is up here on this button, the job icon. And if you click on that, you can add a perm role, a contract role, or a temp role. So let's click on permanent first of all. So as we mentioned, you're always going to put in those fields, the mandatory ones in red. So you put in the job title, the category to match that, how many people do you require to fill this job, and then the salary ranges or flat salary in here as well. So what I was going to show you in here as well. So if you just fill that in as normal, you can also put in your fee. So actually, let's just type in some details so you can see it on here about how it works. So I've already pre-entered my fee agreements with that client on the company record, which is something you can do. So it knows that when I put in these particular figures on the salary, it's an 18% agreed fee. So see that it's put it in there for me. So then you could put in a job title as well. You could put in, we've got a project director role, and then down here you could put in project director. If you've got that, I'm going to put project manager. So then you put in the start date, the estimated start date. So you can either put a month on, 2 months, or I'm just going to put in today's date because it's straight away as soon as we can. The one thing I wanted you to see is if we create that now, that is a permanent role in the system. Now, if you wanted to put in a fixed term salaried role, what you would do is you would then go and put in fixed term, yes. And notice it tells you need an end date. So it warns you and you must put that in. So the end date of the role in there, you'd go and enter that in. Let's go and pop that in. There you go. So that is a fixed term role in the system. And then you can, if you want, put on reason for the job. So in this instance, it could be something like maternity cover, and then you confirm. So that is your permanent role and your fixed term salaries. If we go back to the job tab, then we can go and look at a contract role. So very similar, as you'll see, as you put in your job title, and then you can also put in where is your job category? Job category over here. And then after that, the difference is then going to be your pay type. So as you can see, you can pick daily, hourly, or weekly rate. So let's say we've got a day rate. So down at the bottom here, that is how much you're going to be paying somebody for the day. So let's say £300. And then how much are you going to be charging for that person? So let's say £530. Usually, because we consider that most contractors are going to be, like we said, non-PAYE, normally you wouldn't need to use your post AWR rates in here. This is something that we can switch off in the system so that these don't appear. So let us know if you don't want to see these details in here. And notice you've got an overtime one and an overtime 2 rate, and you can fill those in as well. So that is going to be your contract job, and all you put in is start date, end date, and number required. So there we go. So last but not least at all is we've got in here our temp jobs. So notice when we click on that, we do have the option to create a regular role or a shift job in there as well. So if I click on temp irregular, so again, you put in your job title, start and end date as you guys would expect. Notice start and end time at the moment, that isn't actually mandatory, but when you go and book someone in the role, you must put those times in. They become mandatory fields. So if you know the start and end times, you might as well put those in now. Also, it's really useful because if you do put that in, it's going to be very accurate on your forecasting in the system. If you don't put the times in, the system doesn't really know how many hours is that per day. So notice here on the right, very different to your contract role, you have up to 15 different rates that you can go and put in for this job. So of course, you're always going to put in your basic rate in there. So let's say £10 an hour, and you're going to put in your charge. And now when it comes to temp, it's more likely if you're on kind of lower rates or minimum wage or that kind of thing, you might be looking at controlling your AWR rate. So when it's week 13, if you know what their pay is going to go up to, so it could be £12, you're going to know, if you can put that in now, on week 13, they will automatically go from their pre-AWR rate to their post on that date. Okay, so you can go and enter in any other appropriate rates and then confirm. So that is your temp regular job. And like I say, it's always going to be the start and end times are going to be the same each day on there. And number of required, whether it's 1 or whether it's 5, it's going to be the same people generally appearing in that role. Now you can replace them if for any reason they don't turn up, they're sick, and you do need to replace someone for a shift that day. You still have the ability to do that, but the idea is that person is fixed in that role. And last, we've got on there our temp job, and that is our temp shift job. Okay, so the other 3 are very similar. This one is the most different in the system. So you do, again, put in job title and job category. Number of required doesn't really matter when it comes to a temp shift job. And the reason for that is you're going to go in and you're then going to build the shifts afterwards. So you'll think of the temp shift job as a shell. It's an empty shell, it's just a role, and then you go and build in the number of shifts afterwards. So I wouldn't be too focused on number required or start and end dates in here. And then notice in here, we've got something called, you can create frameworks for a temp shift job, which means you can go in and you can put in predetermined rates or like a rates matrix for that client for those particular jobs. So you can create it before so that when you create the job, all those rates pull through. And there are other job webinars that show this in them. Now, if you don't want to use a framework, you're going to create the rates, you put no RTD. Again, this is explained better in a further webinar. And then you can go next. So if I just put in there, we've got, what should we put? There we go. Don't know if we've got that in there. We do. Lovely. Okay, so next. And in here, you would then go and start creating your different rates. So very similar to temp regular, but you see you can go and put basic, overtimes, etc. So I'm not going to run you through this bit because again, that's going to be in your temp shift webinar, but that's how you'd go in. So after that, you would create the job. It is empty in there, and then you'd go start building in the shift patterns or ad hoc shifts that you need and booking in people for that week or weeks ahead. Okay, so that is the difference between the 4 jobs in the system. I hope that helps.